Okay, so we're diving into something pretty interesting today.
Yeah, this should be fun.
Yeah, there was all this talk about Kendrick Lamar's Grand National Tour.
Right.
You know,
Right.
like, would it be a success? Would it?
Would it flop?
Yeah, would it flop? Exactly.
All this chatter online.
All that online chatter, right?
People were kind of predicting that it might underperform.
Yeah,
A little bit of maybe a narrative forming.
exactly. And it's funny how that narrative gets flipped on its head when you actually look at what's happening with the tour.
Well, yeah, I mean, the ticket sales tell a whole different story,
It was a
right?
completely different story.
Like when you look at the first 23 dates of the tour,
Yeah. What are we seeing? Like
90% of tickets sold.
90%. That's huge.
It's massive. And I mean, for those who aren't, following the music industry super closely,
Yeah, like
what does that actually mean?
Right.
A 90% sell-through rate at this stage
Yeah.
for a tour of this size is a really strong indicator
Yeah.
that those remaining tickets are probably going to be snatched up
Totally.
as we get closer to the actual concert dates.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. A stadium with tens of thousands of people.
Right.
And just a tiny fraction of those seats are still available.
Yeah, you're talking about a packed house pretty much every night.
Exactly. And so that level of demand, what does that tell us about the number of people actually going to these shows?
Well, we're looking at an average of about 49,000 people per show for those first 23 dates.
Wow.
So yeah, consistently night after night, that many people.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah, it really gives you a sense of the scale of this tour.
The scope, the scale, it's really becoming a potentially historic event.
Yeah, I mean, there's buzz that this could be the first solo stadium tour for a rapper
Wow.
with this kind of consistent attendance since,
Sounds like the
Jay-Z and Eminem tours.
right back in the day when they were doing those co-headlining things.
Yeah, exactly. And, that puts Kendrick in some pretty significant company.
Oh, absolutely.
Within the genre, it makes you think, what does it really take for a hip-hop artist
Yeah.
to command that kind of audience all on their own?
That's a great question, and it kind of brings us to the comparisons that are inevitably going to come up with Drake, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because even when Drake has shared the stage with, I mean, huge names,
Oh, yeah, future Migos J. Cole.
Lil Wayne, 21 Savage, like you name it.
Yeah, the who's who of hip-hop.
But his recent tours haven't consistently filled venues to that same capacity that Kendrick is achieving solo.
Right, that's a really interesting point.
Yeah, so it kind of suggests there's maybe a shift happening in the dynamics of live hip-hop performance.
Yeah, it definitely points to maybe a difference in their drawing power
As solo acts.
as solo acts on these huge stages.
Yeah, and here's where it gets even more interesting. There have been reports of Drake canceling some of the remaining dates on his Anita Max tour.
Oh, wow.
Now, if those reports are true,
Yeah.
that suggests he's facing some challenges in filling even smaller venues
Right,
than the stadiums that Kendrick is selling out.
yeah. That's a pretty stark contrast.
It is. It really highlights Kendrick's strength as a solo performer right now.
Yeah, it does, and I think it speaks to the connection he has with his fan base.
Yeah.
The kind of live experience he's known for. I mean, it's not just the music,
Right, it's the whole,
it's the production, the energy,
the whole package.
And we can't discount the impact of his Super Bowl halftime show.
Oh, that was huge.
I mean, that kind of global performance,
Yeah.
it elevates an artist to a whole different level
Yeah.
of public awareness, and it broadens their appeal,
Right.
especially for live shows on this scale.
It was a cultural moment for sure, and it really resonated with so many people.
Absolutely.
And it's easy to see how that kind of exposure would solidify his position
Yeah,
as a top-tier live draw.
for sure.
So all that speculation about the tour maybe flopping,
Right, all that early chatter.
yeah, it seems completely unfounded.
It does, because the ticket sales paint a very different picture.
They show overwhelming demand.
And I think, this level of success with near sellouts across the board,
Yeah,
for the initial dates, it really puts those doubts to rest.
puts him to bed.
Kendrick's still got it,
He still got it.
And the numbers don't lie. They speak volumes about his place in the industry.
I mean, when you think about the sheer size of these venues,
Right.
we're talking about stadiums designed for massive audiences.
Yeah, the biggest of the big.
And then you hear reports that Drake hasn't been able to consistently reach that level of attendance
Right.
in similar venues as a solo headliner. It really highlights a difference
It does.
in their current drawing power.
It's a big difference.
Yeah, it is. But it's also important to note that this tour's success isn't just about Kendrick's individual achievement.
Right. It has broader implications
Right.
for hip-hop touring in general.
I mean, it's being recognized not just for the commercial success,
Right.
but for its potential to kind of reshape how these large-scale hip-hop events are put together.
Yeah, how they're conceived and executed.
Exactly. It highlights the power of these curated live experiences where you have artists who have genuine synergy.
Yeah, they work well together.
And Kendrick's tour with SCA and Mustard is a perfect example.
A prime example.
They have that shared musical history, that creative connection.
Right, it enhances the whole experience for the fans.
Exactly. So you're leveraging that collective strength.
Yeah.
Right? Artists with shared roots, compatible styles.
Yeah, and it seems like that's a trend that's gaining momentum.
Yeah, like we're seeing it with The Weeknd's upcoming tour.
Right, with Playboi Carti and Mike Dean.
Yeah, so it kind of suggests that hip-hop artists might be moving towards these strategic collaborations.
Right, to reach that stadium level.
Exactly, and when you factor in Travis Scott's recent stadium shows,
Yeah.
alongside Kendrick's success, it really points to a growing potential for more hip-hop artists to do these massive solo tours.
Absolutely.
It reminds me of how Eminem and Jay-Z,
Right, the pioneers.
they really paved the way for hip-hop to become this force in arenas.
They broke down barriers.
And now it's like we're seeing the next stage in that evolution.
Yeah, are we witnessing hip-hop artists regularly headlining stadium tours?
On their own or in these really powerful pairings?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question.
And it's important to remember that Kendrick's impact goes way beyond just touring.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, his influence stretches way beyond live performance.
From the Super Bowl to his music. It's
everything, right?
the whole package deal.
I mean, critically acclaimed, commercially successful lyrical music.
Yeah, he's constantly pushing the boundaries.
Absolutely.
Setting a high bar for the genre.
So when you consider everything,
Right.
the narrative surrounding Kendrick's tour has completely flipped.
180.
He's exceeding expectations, setting new benchmarks.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder how this is going to influence other artists.
Right, what are they going to do?
Will we see more of these collaborative experiences?
It's definitely something to watch as the tour continues.
For sure.
This deep dive into the early success of the Grand National Tour really shows us Kendrick's power.
His artistic power, the connection with his fans.
And the exciting potential for innovation and growth within hip-hop.
It shows that artistic excellence, a strong connection with the fan base,
Yeah.
and a strategic approach to collaborations can still equal big success,
Big-time success.
even in this ever-changing music industry.
So as the tour goes on and as Kendrick potentially breaks even more records,
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see the ripple effect.
Yeah, how does this impact the broader music world?
And what new paths does it create for other artists?
It leaves you thinking about the future of hip-hop on this grand scale.
Yeah.
What venues will it conquer, and what collaborations will fuel its biggest moments?
Really makes you think.
It does.
Okay, well, that's our deep dive for today.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
We'll catch you next time.
See you later.